but we are going to talk about modern wiretapping, and it's far beyond your wildest imagination. So stay tuned. You're watching Big Tech, PATRIOT'S.com. Go to the shows tab, look for this banner, Big Tech. You can get to the archive notes that way. It's underneath the category Read, Watch, Think for Yourself. We are on episode 71. Notes have gone out in YouTube land. If you're not on YouTube land, PatriotSoapbox.com. It's where you can find the archive notes. We are going to talk about ultra wideband. We are going to talk about surveillance. We're going to look at a few companies that offer solutions for customer convenience under the guise of safety and improved well-being. We're going to look at some articles that discuss this technology being rolled out into modern wireless devices, in particular the iPhone 11, which is already out in production. And we're going to look at some documents from DARPA and watch a little TV as it relates to ultra wideband. So ultra wideband comes in many flavors. It's used in medical applications. It can measure just about everything. It understands where your skin is, where your fat is. It can distinguish between these things in muscle, cartilage, teeth, bone, organs. It can map the organs. It can do things like interpret your speech. And I will show you what I mean in a moment. We're going to get to these patents here, but for example, this is a radar microphone, speech recognition. This is from the Navy, National Institute, National Standards. Here it is. National Institute of Standards and Technology and the Navy. The other patent that we're going to look at today is one from Alcatel-Lucent, which is a major R&D / equipment provider for telecom, contactless speech recognition. We're going to look at acoustic speech characterization and recognition. And this comes from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. And this one we're going to spend some time on because it literally discusses itemizing every component that's required for speech. And it talks about how they can use ultra wideband to map and identify these things in sub-second timing. And they don't even need a microphone to recreate your speech. That's what this patent discusses, is being able to recreate speech with a 96 to a 99% accuracy without the use of a microphone using ultra wideband. We're going to watch some videos and on and on. So let's just get started. I guess we'll start with DARPA, and this is the Hermes program. And this was back in 2014. They were looking at wideband, low power radio frequency signals to mitigate the effects of RF jamming. And the reason I bring this up in the beginning is because DARPA, the government, intel agencies, et cetera, they've been using wideband for a long time. And only now is it really available and known to the general public because it's been reduced to a form factor and a cost that is reasonable for consumers to pay for. And we're going to look at the consumer applications of this technology in addition to some of the surveillance applications of this technology. And we will, like I said, if your mind isn't blown by the end of this show, you're doing good. Because I've been looking at this for a long time and I consistently am amazed. Radio whispering promises a great leap in wireless communication. This is 2016. Again, it's another article relating to Hermes, but they're looking at the Defense Department, the electromagnetic spectrum, and they're trying to accommodate for the ever-growing number of military devices. You could substitute this for consumer devices as well. In this case, this article is oriented around defense. UAVs, embedded sensors, smart devices of all kinds. So we understand those things as smart cities, Internet of Things. It's the same general problem. And what this program, Hermes, is looking at doing is being able to instantly provide more than 10 gigahertz of instantaneous bandwidth below 20 gigahertz. And the reason this is significant is because I'll just show you. They have a nice chart right here. This is a breakdown of what the wireless spectrum allocation looks like. If you go to the FCC, you can find wireless allocation spectrum. And what you see here is spectrum allocation today. And this is true globally. And I say the FCC because that's what's in the United States. And it's all chopped up. And so it's very inefficient. And so what they're looking at doing with 5G is figuring out ways to share the spectrum more efficiently using AI and cognitive radio, which is another term you see here. And what this does, cognitive radio looks for available bandwidth at any given time, basically instantaneously, allocates it, uses it, and then makes it available again for the next user. So it's elastic, it's pliable. And Hermes right here is using ultra wideband, hyper wideband signals to mitigate the effects of jamming and interference, where it can cross all of these frequency spectrums using such low power that it doesn't interfere with normal communication. So this is military technology, military research that's riding on top of commercially available spectrum, of just the available spectrum, in such a way that it's non-intrusive and can be encrypted, and it's so low power that it's really hard to intercept. It's really hard to read and understand when you look at it from a signals intelligence perspective. And that's really the gist of the Hermes program. So there's another program that DARPA is into, and it's their WARP program. And this is a more recent endeavor. This article was written the 24th of January in 2020. And this is DARPA introducing a project wideband adaptive RF protection program, seeks to enhance protections for wideband receivers operating in congested and contested electromagnetic environments. So it's generally the same thing as the Hermes program, but it's just the next step. And the reason why I think they're doing this is because they know the Internet of Things is going to be wideband. Wideband is for very close proximity, 30 feet, 100 feet, could even go out as far as 200 feet reasonably, functioning with wideband and being able to provide extremely high throughput connections. And if you're able to hack that, you can do a lot of damage, because it's these connections that do things like keep cars going in a straight line when they're automated. It's these kinds of technologies and connections that give cars the ability to see with their radar sensor technologies. It's these types of things that are going to allow drones to fly around in the air autonomously. It's these types of things that are going to allow you access to your car and to your house and to other secure facilities. Let's say you work in a corporate environment where you can use your phone as a proximity device to get you in and out of locations. So if you can hack these technologies, you are going to potentially make the economy, safety, the general way of life, right? As we move into this age of automation and the fourth industrial revolution, you're going to make society incredibly vulnerable. So this is why DARPA is looking at programs like wideband adaptive RF protection, where it's looking specifically at wideband receivers. This is just a publication from DARPA, wideband adaptive RF protection. We will get back into surveillance. This is important to lay out because this illustrates the top-down push, if you will, to normalize this technology, to master this technology, and to ultimately be able to adapt to any implementation of this technology, offensively and defensively. This is where radio communications are going in large part. Wideband adaptive RF protection. So what it's really showing you here is you have all of these different spectrum frequencies. You could just think of this as Wi-Fi, cell phone, 5G technology, 5G frequencies, whatever that looks like in your mind. Radio frequencies, AM, FM radio, television broadcast frequencies, satellite frequencies, all of it. Understanding all of it, being able to make sense of it and use it any way they want, and do so in a secure way, and or keep these connections, these communications secure, just in a network management capacity. That is the general focus of this technology. It also talks about being able to spin up and spin down frequencies, whereby they can take an antenna and they can multiply its frequency by 2, 3, or 4. So you can have a 2.4 gigahertz antenna and double the frequency, triple the frequency, quadruple the frequency, basically using software and resonators to create any frequency you want using an existing chipset, like a Wi-Fi chip. Could be able to run a 5G communication signal in a wideband environment just by doubling, tripling, quadrupling the frequency. So these are very interesting programs, and this all ties into software-defined radio and software-defined networks. And we're going to get more into that as time goes on when we start digging more into 5G. But for now, let's look at ultra wideband, and we're going to see kind of what this does. I need to make sure I check the boxes here, so bear with me for a second. Boxes are checked. We're going to watch some videos, and then I'm going to show you just exactly what this stuff can do medically. But I want to illustrate for you just how nearby and how very real this stuff is. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So here we go.
Can you imagine a world that's all about you and what you want? We can. You want to be recognized? Sure. You want to be curious? Keep going. You want a home without borders? Say no more. You want to be found? You're here. You want to be in control? You are. You want an environment that understands what moves you, made for you. You want to be. You will be. UWB.
Ultra wideband, micro power impulse radar, same thing. We are going to look more at these technologies throughout the course of tonight's show. Please stay tuned. This is modern surveillance, folks, and it's everywhere.
Hey, my name is Charles Dax. I'm General Manager for the NFC and ultra-wideband activities at NXP. What I want to share with you today is some of the unique capabilities of this technology, show you how it provides unique use cases across different industry verticals. So ultra-wideband provides the ability to very precisely locate devices real-time in space, with accuracies of just a few centimeters and a few degree of angle accuracy. We see applications on this into the mobile space, in the industrial space, and home IoT, and into automotive environments. So an illustration of the secure location capability of the ultra-wideband is demonstrated here on the screen. I have a tracker, ultra-wideband tracker on me. You can see my position relative to the screen. It shows the distance and the angle to the screen. I'm going to be moving away from it at a different angle. You see this changing, getting on the other side of the screen, real time. It's able to track my location. An even better demonstration of the location capability of ultra-wideband is demonstrated on this screen. So we have equipped a number of people from NXP here with a tracker that we were discussing just earlier. You can see my position. So I'm Charles here. You can see my position with respect to the screen I'm standing in front. Where's Steve? Steve is just standing in the back of it, just a meter away. You can really see the difference in location between the two. Maybe I'll show you as I walk around on the space here, how it's just tracking me. So I'm moving away from the screen. I'm a few meters away now. About 5 meters away from the screen. Just in front, making a tour, and progressively moving back in front of the screen. You can see how it's tracking me throughout my little journey here. Another illustration of the secure location capability of ultra-wideband is shown in this demonstration, where you have a door access lock equipped with ultra-wideband. I'm going to move in proximity to this door with my phone, which is equipped with NXP ultra-wideband technology, and this will automatically grant me access to the facility. So these were just a few illustrations of the secure ranging capabilities of ultra-wideband. ultra-wideband. NXP has co-founded the FIRA Fine Ranging Consortium with Assa Abloy, Samsung, and Bosch. Many industry partners are joining us now to define the use cases that will thrive from the ultra-wideband capability. Join us at FIRA.com. If you have interest in talking to NXP about such technology, go online on NXP.com and you'll find links to ultra-wideband capabilities there. Thanks.
All right. So we'll just keep going. What is ultra wideband? Why is it in the iPhone 11? Apple's new iPhone 11. This was September 20th, 2019. It's out. It's around you. So this is Apple's version basically of Google Soli, in my view. Whether or not they've got the same gesture recognition deployment yet is to be determined. But nonetheless, this is Google and Apple's versions, if you will. It's the same general technology, different implementations, but they do the same thing. So Apple's new iPhone 11 device includes a U1 chip with ultra wideband technology. This isn't new technology, but it's the first time it's been in a modern smartphone. It's not just about iPhones. Android phones could also get ultra wideband. I will submit to you that because we've looked at these DARPA programs, right? This WARP program and this Hermes program, that, yeah, here it is. This stuff has already been deployed. This is the one I was looking for. And what I mean by that is that they can basically use your existing chipsets and get wideband. And I'll show you exactly what I mean when we start looking at the medical applications, because they're using the 2 gigahertz range for wideband. And that exists in every modern device deployed today. So what they're saying here is true, but they're spicing it up, right? This is a puff piece on the new iPhone. Just know that your Wi-Fi chip, your Bluetooth chip, your radio chip that's used for communications with the cell tower has the potential to offer wideband sensing and spectrum capability. Just because it's not made available for consumer use doesn't mean that it's not usable and it's not accessible. That said, let's continue this article. What can ultra wideband be used for? Apple didn't bother mentioning this feature during the iPhone 11 release. Interesting. But it is noted on Apple's website. As Apple puts it, ultra wideband technology offers spatial awareness. Initially, Apple only advertises one UWE feature. When the iOS 13.1 update arrives on September 24th, this was back in 2019, AirDrop gets even better with directionally aware suggestions. In other words, you can point your iPhone at someone else's iPhone and AirDrop will know you probably want to send things to them. Today, your iPhone just uses Bluetooth to understand who's around you. It doesn't know who you're looking at or where they are precisely. Put another way, this feature allows an iPhone or any other smartphone that implements it to precisely detect where other objects are in physical space. That's something lacking in smartphones today. I don't agree with that last statement personally. Spatial awareness is, that's what radar is all about, and that's what is possible with radio frequency transmissions. So anyway, how does it work? Like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, ultra wideband is a wireless communication protocol that uses radio waves. Ultra wideband offers high bandwidth with low power usage, but it can only work over short distances. That's why other wireless technologies like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are still useful. They have a longer range. Unlike narrowband technologies, ultra wideband transmits data over a wider frequency, above 500 megahertz. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are unreliable ways of detecting distance and position. A device with a stronger signal is probably closer than one with a weaker signal, but that's all you can detect. It's not perfect, as signals can be boosted to trick the system. Rather than depending on signal strength, iPhone will measure the round trip time of the signal to determine the distance it is from another device. Through multiple antennas, ultra wideband can also measure the angle the signal is arriving from. A precise angle combined with a precise distance means your iPhone can pinpoint an object to a reasonably precise location in space. Ultra wideband says its system accuracy is between 10 and 30 centimeters, as opposed to 1 to 3 meters with Bluetooth beacons, or 5 to 15 meters with Wi-Fi. And those are horribly imprecise figures, because we looked at technologies on the last show that understood heartbeat and respiration, which is, I don't think your chest expands 5 meters, or your heart, when it beats, it doesn't expand 5 meters or even 1 meter. So this, again, this is just a puff piece for Apple. And they're using some very generic figures here that, in my view, are not the current industry standards for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Nonetheless, what we're also going to see is that this 10 to 30 centimeter figure with ultra wideband is grossly inaccurate. They can measure your mouth, for example, the different components in your mouth, down to 10 micrometers. That's 10,000 nanometers, 0.001 centimeters. They can distinguish movements of your tongue, your cheek, your pharynx, your trachea, all of your vocal cords, down to 0.001 centimeters with ultra wideband technology, 10 micrometers with ultra wideband technology, being able to recreate your speech without a microphone. So this is also an inaccurate number in my view. Technology is part of the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. It's reportedly working on its own hardware tracking tags. This is Apple, so keychain, wallet, bag, anything that's going to have backscatter technology devices in it, anything that's going to have a near field proximity tag, those things will all integrate using ultra wideband technology to be able to locate things specifically. Tracker tiles, right? Augmented reality is going to benefit from ultra wideband. And it says here that ultimately Android phones are going to get the same technology. Here's another article discusses the same thing, ultra wideband explained and why it's in the iPhone 11. So it talks about in the early 2000s, ultra wideband saw limited use in military radars and covert communication, and was used briefly as a form of medical imaging, such as remote heart monitoring systems. We're going to look at that today. Its adoption lagged until recently, when commercial interests began to explore the potential uses. And so a lot of what is said in this, we've already read in the last article. But what I want to show you here is what this guy's saying. Because it's such a high frequency, they're talking about the 500 megahertz and 60 gigahertz, which is what the newer Wi-Fi standards offer. If you go out and buy a Wi-Fi router today, you're going to get a 60 gigahertz connection in addition to your 2.4 and your 5 gigahertz. And they say that it's advantageous because it has such a wide bandwidth and it has a lot of data capacity. If you're transmitting a 60 gigahertz signal, which is modern Wi-Fi and a open unlicensed band for 5G. Facebook, for example, is looking at 60 gigahertz for an outdoor environment applications for their own networks. That has a 500 megahertz wide channel. You can multiply that by however many channels, and you're talking about a very wide band. So 500 megahertz is you can have two 500 megahertz channels for 1 gigahertz, and 60 gigahertz goes up to what from 57 gigahertz to 64 gigahertz. So you're looking at roughly an 8 gigahertz spread with the ability of having a 500 megahertz channel. So you could have approximately 16 different wideband channels running at the same time over just what's allocated for the Wi-Fi component of 60 gigahertz. That's not including these radios being software defined or scalable so that they can up convert or down convert their signals and create frequency spectrum outside of what they're traditionally used for, which goes back to what we were looking at with regards to DARPA. So it also talks about ultra wideband using MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, distributed antenna systems, meaning that this stuff is very effective and potentially very, very dangerous, but very, very good at what it's gonna be able to do. And it's important here to remember that this is MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, has many antennas distributed, because what we're going to look at in these patents in a minute is discussing using multiple antennas to create high resolution, very, very, very highly focused imagery, using multiple antennas with ultra wideband transmissions to basically understand everything about you, down to blood flow, your digestive system, and the monitoring of a fetus inside of a pregnant mother, to understand everything that you would go to the doctor for or get a sonogram. Like, they would understand the gestation age and the overall health and the heartbeat and development factors, and be able to identify birth defects or development deficiencies. All of that can be done with this technology. And it's in your cell phone. It's in your cell phone. It's an example of what it does. It just looks at reflections and time of flight, and it understands where things are in three-dimensional space. So it talks about this stuff being tuned into a smartphone or a watch. It could allow you to access a bank account via an ATM. So you understand the necessity of this stuff being very, you have to have security. Network security is critical with this stuff when people become dependent upon the convenience of being able to walk up to something and have it know what you want and do things like give you money, or do things like debit your charge card or debit your bank account, paying for groceries or gas, or walking up to your vehicle and getting in your vehicle and allowing it to start with something like your phone. Can you imagine what network security specialists are going to be worth in the future? The requirement for network security and cybersecurity is exponentially increasing as we become more and more infused into the Internet of Things. And you'll see it. It's coming out now. It's coming to stores and products and services near you. It's happening right now. Right now. So talks about the possibilities of what this stuff can do. And here's just some examples of what they're going to sell you. This is what they're selling you, the conveniences, consumer conveniences. So you will accept and want this kind of technology. Hands-free access control, residential access control, restricted enterprise access. That's the open the door at work kind of a thing. Parking garage, vehicle digital key, rider identification, smart transportation. Get on a subway, have it debit your account, log you in, log you out. You don't need to get a ticket anymore. Logical access control. I can see COVID applications for that. In and out of stores, being able to count people, track people, ding you for not social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. Unmanned store access. That's getting rid of jobs and people, but still allowing you to go in and go shopping for groceries, let's say at midnight, even though no one's in the store, because it's going to know everything you buy. It's going to have everything tagged. You're going to put it in your basket or your cart. And as you walk out the door, it's going to ring everything up and charge you. And it's going to know where you went, what you grabbed, who you were around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Under smart retail, no people required. Well, if there are no people required, do you really think you're going to have the money to go buy this stuff? They're going to sell this and roll this out. They're going to deleverage the jobs. They're going to put people on welfare. And then they're going to turn off the chicken feed. They're going to turn off the welfare and deleverage everybody as robotics come in to play. And then they're going to force you onto the network and become compliant through body motion and gestures, automating you, the human, in order to get money, in order to live and survive. And that is the technocratic agenda. The reduction of the species, the automation of the species, deleveraging the value of humans through automation and robotics, thereby then forcing humans to reduce population and those that are left to assimilate onto a network whereby they are controlled by AI. But I'm digressing. Let's get back to surveillance. Industry 4.0 in healthcare, barrier-free and restricted access control. If you're allowed, if your social credit score authorizes you. Location-based services, employee mustering in emergencies. Well, that's a real fun way of saying real-time tracking of employee and what they do, where they go, who they interact with, bike sharing, ride sharing, reserved seat validation, augmented reality gaming, indoor navigation, foot traffic, shopping behavior and analytics, asset tracking and patient tracking, real-time tracking of you and everything you do. Ultra wideband, high resolution, high definition. This is surveillance that's going to be given to big tech. It has been given to big tech. Already in use, already rolled out, already deployed, going to get much higher resolution, much greater real-time data fed into the AI global brain, Internet of Things, complete surveillance tracking system to then thereby offer stimuli put back into society to then steer and shape the outcome of society using future prediction technologies based on the analytics that are provided to it through sensor fusion activities with things like ultra wideband, down to your speech, down to your emotional responses, which they can read remotely with this technology. We're going to get into that in a moment. Device to device and peer-to-peer applications, conference systems, drone control delivery, vehicle to anything technology, autonomous driving, ticket validation, VR gaming and group play, find somebody nearby, targeted marketing, tap-free remote payment, proximity-based patient data sharing, and find equipment. Ultra wideband, folks. Ultra wideband. So ultra wideband talks about being integrated into the Wi-Fi Alliance, Car Connectivity Consortium, and others. We'll focus on ultra wideband use cases utilizing the available 6 to 9 gigahertz spectrum. That's the mid-band spectrum for 5G. That's it's coming to a chipset near you, folks. So let's move on. Let's backscatter, ultra wideband backscatter communication for the Internet of Things. You remember backscatter with Facebook being able to use the energy radiating from things like the AM FM tower, TV tower, cell phone tower, being able to use that energy to turn on your device with or without a battery, to be able to pull information off of your device, to be able to access your microphone and your camera or any other sensor function, being able to remotely charge up capacitors in your phone to then use higher output sensors and or higher output functionality on your phone by using capacitors that are built in to, over a period of time, collect these waves, the energy out of these waves, and store them in capacitors in the phone to then discharge those capacitors rapidly to do things that your phone would normally do with a battery in it. Well, that's part of the Internet of Things, whereby the sensors that are going out there are going to be pulling energy out of the air from these types of devices or this type of infrastructure, all the things that irradiate electromagnetic energy, and it's going to power the Internet of Things. Just wait until we start getting into the nanotechnology that also is able to be powered with this backscatter technology. We're going there next. Biophysical monitoring. I don't think I have that up here. No. So I'll show you that in an upcoming episode very, very soon where they talk about using backscatter technology to power implanted devices. And then we're going to tie in Charles Lieber's stuff, his nanotech that creates cyborg cells, being able to read information out of each cell or stimulate a cell or many cells and create clusters of cells that do complex things, powered with things like backscatter technology. And we are deploying it everywhere. But surveillance today, we don't want to get into the remote manipulation of humans just quite yet. We're still dealing with how surveillance works and potentially considering the possibilities of what technologies are used for things like treason. Let's move on, because I wanted to show you this graphic here to illustrate for you that ultra wideband backscatter communication for the Internet of Things is coming, and it will be powered with things like your cell phone. because it will be emitting ultra wideband radiation wherever it goes. And so this whole green concept where this 5G is going to make everything green, it's not. All it's going to do is deploy technologies that are going to allow your device to power the public space. So you're going to pay for it. The telecom providers will reduce their costs by controlling the network and telling your device to emit pulses to power nearby backscatter sensors. And it will send a script around, and your phone will pulse and power the devices so the commercial networks don't have to. And they get carbon offsets, and you get to plug your phone in and pay for the power. Anyway, let's move on. Ultra wideband. We're going to go through some of these patents and documents that I've listed here. You can look at these yourself. They're on the website that I'm building, humaninternet.org. Humaninternet.org. It's underneath the Wi-Fi ultra wideband section, underneath the wireless tab. And we're going to get into directed energy weapons here, directed energy technologies, as we start looking more at 5G. But right now we're dealing with Wi-Fi and ultra wideband. And so I've preloaded a few of these things I'm going to share with you now. No contact vital signs monitor. This is from Georgia Tech. This is back in 1988. Georgia Tech is a preferred partner with DARPA. An apparatus and a method for measuring simultaneous physiological parameters, heart rate and respiration, without physically connecting electrodes or other sensors to the body. A beam of frequency modulated continuous wave radio frequency energy is directed towards the body of a subject. The reflected signal contains information representing the movement of the surface of the body from which respiration, your breathing, and your heartbeat information can be obtained. The reflected phase modulated energy is received and demodulated by this apparatus using synchronous quadrature detection. So they're sending out many uniquely identifiable energy signatures at you. And then they are receiving those reflections, and they are understanding when they put those unique signatures together, they are able to extract your heartbeat, your respiration, and so much more. Keep in mind, this was back in 1988 when this patent was filed. And we will move on. Biometric radar system and method for identifying persons and positional states of persons. This is from Raytheon. If you're not familiar with Raytheon, look Raytheon up. They're a major military industrial complex company. I believe Dr. Esper comes from Raytheon, and he's the Secretary of Defense, the SecDef. Dr. Mark Esper, Raytheon. Anyway, biometric radar system and a method for identifying a person's positional state. Biometric radar may phase adjust a sequence of radar return signals, meaning there's more than one energy form, beam form, more than one energy source, if you will, or pulse, whatever visual description is going to show you many unique electromagnetic waves being beamed at your body simultaneously in a known, repeatable, configurable way that are then received by two or more antennas that are then able to remove some of the noise and distortion from the other nearby objects, things that are not of interest. And once they filter that stuff out, the biometric radar can segment and adjust the radar return signals into many multi-resolutional Doppler components. So they're using Doppler technology. And it may be associated with a plurality, many different biometric features. And it may weight The segmented radar returns for each feature to generate weighted classifications for feature extraction process. What does that mean? That means that this thing is able to understand who you are, where you are, what you're doing, and how your body's responding in real time, and be able to answer all of those questions instantaneously. That's what this technology can do. Will continue. An emotional sensor system. Oh, doesn't that sound fun? This invention discloses a millimeter wave radar sensor to be deployed as an emotion sensor, being inherently small in size and being able to be produced in a low-cost manner. The key system relevant component are utilization of millimeter wave. It's a trigger word for people that think they understand 5G. Millimeter wave. Millimeter waves are just one component of 5G, but millimeter wave. Integrated radar, specific planar high gain antenna radiation patterns, and analyzing the vital signs of objects by the same apparatus. The objects are human beings with vital sign vibrations and animals with vital sign vibrations. The system calculates and detects the frequency of vital sign rates, heartbeats, and respiration. The values of the vital sign rates, as well as the changes of the vital sign rates, are used together with object vital sign profiles to calculate emotion. An emotional value may be additionally enhanced by specific movement pattern events added additionally into the emotional status evaluation. Emotion value can be information about an object mood, a person's mood, or a simple alert of the excitements or the calmness, as well as information of the increased or decreased excitement. So they're measuring your emotional spectrum, folks. How do you feel about anything at any given moment in your environment? Oh, it gets better. The proposed apparatus is using 60 gigahertz. You don't say. That's what's available in every modern Wi-Fi router and every modern cell phone. You buy a cell phone today, it's going to be compatible with 60 gigahertz, which means it's able to emit 60 gigahertz and receive 60 gigahertz. 4 by 2 by 1 centimeter or smaller. That is the footprint of the chip. Here's some cool pictures where we won't necessarily get into all of them, but I'll show you one that looks like, look, I mean, it's just emotional sensor and something like a car, emotional sensor in between, you know, what looks like somebody's wearing one where it like, you have a phone in your pocket and it's going to know if you're attracted to somebody. It's going to know if you look at somebody that's gorgeous or not, and they're going to be able to understand your response. They're going to be able to understand how you feel about your boss. They're going to be able to understand when you look at the TV and you see a political candidate, how you feel. This is going to go into media, advertising, analytics. We haven't even talked about manipulation, because if they can read an emotional response, you can arguably then illustrate that you can induce an emotional response. And if you are having an unfavorable one, then you can induce the appropriate emotional response so that over a period of time, you are conditioned to feel a specific way about a person when they show up on something like your TV or your phone. Social engineering, programming, how cute they show a horse and a kitty cat. Emotion sensor for security applications. Schools, malls, airports, train stations, courts. I wonder if they're going to be there in the court systems, folks. Let's move on, because we still haven't gotten to the meat and potatoes yet. For those of you that are still here, please stick around. Extraction of features from physiological signals. This is from MIT. And the reason I'm showing you these is because this is not a proprietary technology. This is a ubiquitous, universally accepted, everybody's got the software kind of technology. It's everywhere, which means that you are for sale and that this country is being hoarded out, sold out. Intellectual property is so much more than putting a thumb drive in a computer and downloading files from a university. It is the very thoughts and feelings that our best and brightest have when they're at work, when they're at school, when they're at home, when they're at play, because the mind constantly works on problems, and the best and the brightest can't shut it off. They don't shut it off. They choose to continue to engage in what's important to them, regardless of what it is. And if it has some value to somebody, and you can remotely extract things like emotions and or thought, which I can show you, it's posted on humaninternet.org, being able to remotely read and monitor and manipulate brainwaves amongst other technologies, we have a real problem when it comes to telecommunications infrastructure. Because if we're deploying devices that possess the necessary hardware and the connectivity to the cloud that runs the software that can do things like extract these signal characteristics and then make sense of them, like understand your emotional state or what's going on in your brain, your intimate thoughts, intellectual property theft takes on a whole new meaning. Hashtag Huawei, hashtag surveillance. And of course, we can't forget the word of the day, which is treason. MIT, extraction of features from physiologic signals, another one. And I like this one because it shows a picture of an unhappy person having their private information extracted out of them. And what you see here is, let's just expand this so that we're not all squinting if you're watching this on a phone. This is the best we're going to get because it's oriented the wrong way. What you have here is something like a phone. You have a frequency generator that transmits energy out of an antenna. It bounces off a person. It reads the physiologic characteristics, and it goes back in through a receive antenna, and you can extract this information with hardware and software. Everybody has this technology, folks. Everybody has this technology. Method and apparatus for monitoring one or more of a heartbeat and respiration of a live vertebrate animal. This is from Alcatel-Lucent. Alcatel-Lucent does things like provide core telecommunication infrastructure stuff to companies like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, and other land-based telecom internet providers, Comcast, any of your cable companies. Alcatel-Lucent owned Bell Labs for a number of years. Alcatel-Lucent has offices internationally, and they do a great deal of business in Asia. Alcatel-Lucent provided all kinds of information to companies like ZTE and Huawei. So I'll show you some of these pictures. Medical, where this is how this stuff is done, right? This is just how this stuff is done. It's done in a very, very stable setting. And then as the technology is refined and the software and the algorithms get better and better, and then they can put it out where people are moving around, they can deploy it over commercial networks, right, and take it out of the medical realm. But this is a patient that's laying on a bed, and they're remotely monitoring what's going on with this patient. This is Alcatel-Lucent, and this discusses using neural networks to establish with a high probability what the heartbeat is, what the respiration is, and what it all means. Is there an infection? Are they comfortable? Are they uncomfortable? Is their medical condition improving or not? So let's continue. System and a method for extracting physiological data using ultra wideband radar. Now, you remember we opened this discussion, ultra wideband radar, available in mobile devices. It's coming in out as part of the Internet of Things. Watch videos about it, and you get to now see just exactly how this stuff is going to be potentially, in asterisks, potentially used. Here's a person that is being irradiated, and it's reflecting back signals. And this one talks about extracting, again, heartbeat, respiration, those types of things for medical applications. We'll look through here briefly. And it talks about using, disclosed as a variant of ultra-wideband radar, known as micro power impulse radar. Micro power impulse radar, known as MIR. And it's important that we remember this term, MIR, because we are going to look at MIR because it does stuff like this. It comes in form factors like that. And I'll show you, we'll get into reading some of these patents, just exactly what kind of information can be extracted in real time. It talks about, let's see. We're going to move on because there's plenty that I've broken down already. A lot of these say the same thing. System and a method for micro impulse radar detection of physiologic information. This is from Deep Science. Micro impulse radar system to image you. This is where we're going. So because you can get into your car and it turns on and you can open doors without having to touch anything, that's all convenient, but there's a whole lot more going on. You're worth more than that. And I say that euphemistically or sarcastically, you're worth more than that. So it says that pulses, right, happen on the order of picoseconds, and that the pulse generator can pulse to the orders of millions of pulses per second. Radar pulsing at millions of pulses per second. Talks about using time of flight. It talks about basic stuff. Processors to understand and extract this information are capable of being done with commonly available, already in place components in things like cell phones, ASICs, application system on a chip, integrated chip. I can't remember it off the top of my head. An ASIC circuit, field programmable gate arrays. Those are reconfigurable chipsets that come in just about every modern device or system on a chip, which we'll look at with companies like this, Viara, Natera. Both of these companies offer radar-based vital sign monitoring, being able to understand the most intimate detail, looking at your heartbeat, breath rate, everything, contactless vital sign monitoring. And this is the future of telemedicine, folks. This is a great graphic right here. Sending out radar, and it is gently understanding everything about you. Where were we? Yeah, we're about an hour in, so we need to move. So, ultra-wideband radar in a medical setting, ultra-wideband radar in medicine. This is back in 2002. We're going to read a little bit of this, and then we're going to move into some detailed information. University of Rome, ultra-wideband radar. A review is given of the present state of the art, likely to be developed or futuristic biomedical applications of ultra-wideband radar. It's a mix of conventional radar, radio detection and ranging technology, and spread spectrum radio technology, both coming from the military. What renders ultra-wideband radar very much interesting is the possibility to probe the motion of internal organs of the human body with a remote, no-contact approach, which is unique at the present time. Very low cost, high miniaturization capability, and environmental friendliness due to low electromagnetic energy emissions. So, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in 1993, Thomas McEwen discovered the possibility of a new and original implementation of ultra-wideband radar, Lawrence Livermore National Labs. While working on a new high-speed, low-cost sampler for pulse laser research, McEwen developed a system which was called MIR, Micro Power Impulse Radar. The patents on MIR technology describe a wonderful spectrum of applications coming from low-cost MIR. From plastic-bodied mine detection to remote vital sign monitoring to 3D radar camera, three-dimensional radar cameras. Of course, the ultimate application of the futuristic X-ray specs until now is just science fiction until now. Future of biomedical applications. And it talks about the specifics, but here is a chart that illustrates the unique impedance, attenuation, the speed of propagation, and general thickness, electromagnetic and anatomical properties of tissue layers in the thorax, air, fat, muscle, cartilage, lung, and heart. And here is a chart that illustrates the pulse echo delay times in the thorax as predicted by the model. Model predicted attenuation of pulse echo intensity traveling from the transmitting antenna to the receiving antenna. Each step accounts for the boundary transition from one tissue medium to another. And the reason I'm sharing this with you and laying this out in such detail is because when we're talking about surveillance and we're talking about intrusiveness and we're talking about the violation of, let's say, the Fourth Amendment, your right to privacy, is this a violation of your privacy? Because these signals can understand and image every millimeter of your body, outside and in, map it and recreate it, does that give big tech and big telecom the right to do so? Should they be able to monetize it? Should they be able to profit from it? Should they be able to sell it to intelligence community, contractors, or the government? Because you agree to terms of service through force, in my view, through deliberate coercion in order to utilize services that are publicly listed as utility platforms who are actually more like content providers, curators, I think is the word that Tim Apple used. What users want is a curated platform. The guy makes me nauseous, by the way. These companies are literally able to understand everything about you. It gets better. They can take these looking squiggly lines and create images out of them, folks. Just because they show you that all that they're getting is these squiggly lines. So your right to privacy, we're protecting your privacy because it's just radar. It's just these squiggly lines. These squiggly lines can be reconverted and reconfigured into pictures. 3D camera using radar. Medical application, no contact, much more comfortable for the patient. Radar-based heart and breath activities. This is back in 2002. And here's one. Ultra-wideband radar monitor can distinguish between the heart, the placenta of mom, heart of baby, respiration of baby, the uterus in general. There's a patent I'll show you that discusses being able to measure things like amniotic fluid. And we'll continue. let's start here for the sake of time. This patent discusses, just so you know it's real, Lawrence Livermore Labs, 1996, non-acoustic speech characterization and recognition. So we'll start here. It maps everything about your face, your lips, your teeth, your tongue, your pharynx, your glottis, your vocal cords, your jaw, your nasal tract, your palate, everything. Maps it all, tracks it all. And it comes up with squiggly lines that they can interpret as your lips being closed. This is the front of your face, your teeth being closed, your tongue relaxed. Velum open to nose, pharynx open. So all of the mechanics required for speech, independently and collectively, are measured and put through algorithms, machine learning, etc., to recreate your speech without a microphone with ultra wideband micro power impulse technologies. Another graphic that shows you lips slightly follower reflections, I'm not sure. Face is constant, teeth slightly open, tongue tip makes contact, velum closed, pharynx slightly closed, vocal cords not moving, the T is unvoiced. Signal analysis is all this is. Tongue tip drops behind teeth. Tongue back also relaxes. Teeth open more. Lips move forward. Velum opens for nasal O. Pharynx opens a bit. Vocal cords are voiced while speaking O. And it's all done looking at frequency spectrum and time domain analysis. And we will read about this in detail here in a moment. United States government has rights to this invention. This came from Lawrence Livermore Labs, United States Department of Energy, and the University of California, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. The invention is a method and apparatus for non-acoustic speech recognition, which means without a microphone, in which non-acoustic information obtained by radio frequency waves, microwaves, millimeter waves, infrared, or optical waves, right, provide measurements of speech organs. And it can be combined with conventional acoustic information measured with a microphone. The electromagnetic wave requirement is that it reach the speech organ being measured. The non-acoustic and acoustic signals are combined using an algorithm to produce more accurate speech recognition than obtainable from only acoustic information. The non-acoustic speech recognition information and the acoustic information as needed is also available for use in other speech technology applications, such as speaker recognition, meaning the individual speaking, unique voice print analysis kind of stuff, speech synthesis, and speech telephony. Non-acoustic speech recognition systems include electromagnetic generator detector systems that can operate in the non-radiating near field, the intermediate field, and the radiating far field. So it doesn't matter how far away you are. It can detect your speech. All three types of electromagnetic wave field systems can be used for the methods and apparatuses described herein. Time varying near field, immediate, or far field pattern of electromagnetic fields. Human tissue is transparent to the degree needed for the methods herein in many EM wave bands. For example, from 108 hertz to 1014 hertz. All configurations of the EM wave generator modules that meet the frequency, timing, pulse format, position, tissue transmission, and power safety requirements can be used, which means that everything that's regulated and or authorized by the FCC can be used for this type of signal analysis. Electromagnetic wave generators which operate in the non-radiating near field and the intermediate field, where the wave is both non-radiating and radiating, and in the far field, For example, radar at distance sensing. Any of these conditions of the antenna can be used. In particular, microwave radar modules operating at 2.5 gigahertz. Can anybody out there tell me what is around you that functions at 2.5 gigahertz? Or incredibly close to 2.5 gigahertz? And it only needs 2 megahertz pulse repetition to get this kind of specificity. Units have been shown to be safe for routine human use. Well, of course, it's an unlicensed band, or at least 100 megahertz off from an unlicensed band. And when you look at the channels of 2.4 gigahertz, it's even closer than that. They've also been shown to be very portable and very economical. Well, of course, everybody has one. It's called a Wi-Fi chip. It's called a Bluetooth chip. It's called a Zigbee chip. Speech organ motions have been measured simultaneously with a variety of sensor configurations ranging from 3 radar units and 1 microphone, and as simple as 1 radar unit and 1 acoustic microphone signal. So this has been going on for a very long time. At the consumer level, not at the military intel agency level. I'm talking at the consumer level, where you've had 1 antenna and 1 microphone. How long has that been going on? When did the first cell phone come out? When did the first cordless telephone come out? I'm talking the kind that plugs into your home, the 900 megahertz ones. The 80s? 1980s? Improved methods of directing the transmitted EM radar wave into the head and neck have been developed. Well, that's easy. That's beamforming, as well as several antenna design and beam polarization options for speech recognition and other related applications. We're just looking at speech, but just when we get into the specificity of distinguishing between different tissues and the resolution, the size of the range of motion that they can measure, remember that it's more than just speech. There are other related applications. Methods to use varying phases, varying wavelengths have been considered. Multiple simultaneous wavelengths. Example, impulse radars have been used. Talks about 4 different electromagnetic wave detector receiver modes being demonstrated for speech recognition. CW reception, single pulse moving range gate, multiple pulsed fixed range gate, homodyne reception, and other receiver modes have been identified. This doesn't necessarily have to make sense. What it means is that these radar chips that are going into modern devices that are going to be controlled by software have many different options to choose from. Many different options to choose from as it relates to being able to extract things like your speech. Information about the position of the lips, jaw, teeth, tongue, and velum can be obtained by transmitting in a horizontal direction from a range-gated electromagnetic sensor, for example, a radar system, as well as for other types of EM sensors of which view a human subject's speech organs from different directions. Algorithms normalize and digitize the electromagnetic sensor signals intensities and identify one of a few electromagnetic signal structures with known reference locations, such as the skin under the jaw or the face front. The algorithms then take raw vectorized data, normalize, quantize, time align, time compact, and construct a normalized vector for each of a series of signals with control information that correspond to a given organ's configuration at each time frame. Simultaneously measurement of acoustic speech. What does this all say? Complex algorithms understand in real time everything that's going on from the inside out of your mouth, outside in of your mouth, can identify each one of them independently, track their motion, and then fuse all that together using data analysis to reconfigure, reconstruct your speech with things like ultra-wideband radar. While the examples herein are for American English speech, the methods are applicable to all natural human languages. Other to other human sounds and to certain animal communications caused by structures measurable by the methods herein, and to the human vocal organ motions associated with synthetic communication techniques such as the moving of a tongue to direct a wheelchair, or to move a cursor on a CRT screen, or to turn on a cellular phone. We're talking about people with debilities like paralysis. Algorithms rely on two primary factors: the techniques of non-acoustic electromagnetic sensor derived speech organ position and motion measurement are statistically independent of acoustic speech measurement, meaning that the data that they're extracting from the electromagnetic sensors can be fused in with microphone speech recognition, but don't have to be. They can train the electromagnetic signatures by using a microphone. And once those signatures, the electromagnetic signatures, are known and put into a database, you can take the microphone away and just read the electromagnetic signatures and correlate it or compare it to the database that's already been tuned or trained using a microphone. Hell and wheels. So what's the solution? How do we protect ourselves? We can start by understanding what's going on around us and then demand accountability for things like treason, so that the public has a general awareness of what's going on, and then talk about what does a Bill of Rights look like in the cyberspace. Because this is no different. This is no different than the government coming into your house unannounced, demanding that you strip down, take off all of your clothes, and conduct your normal daily activities with them sitting there on your couch or next to your bedside while you're engaging in whatever it is you do, while recording whatever it is you do in the most intimate of ways. That is what we're talking about here. Only rather than it being a physical person violating your privacy, coming into your home, into your place of work, watching you eat, sleep, and shit. It's done with signals intelligence. That's really what we're getting at here. This is modern surveillance, modern wiretapping. When you look in the movies, what they used to do when they were looking at drug kingpins or criminals, they would tap their rooms with cameras and microphones, or have people in an adjacent room literally studying them and their every move in real time. What they watch on TV, how they engage with their children, when they cook food, what they eat, what's their favorite sexual position. All of those things were measured and collated and cataloged in order to understand, quantify, define behavioral characteristics, traits, and to track activities, to learn and understand, and ultimately leverage or deleverage the individual under surveillance. And what I am illustrating for you to the best of my uneducated ability, because I'm not from MIT, I just happen to come from a telecommunications field and was asked to build training at a regional and national level, and then had to start researching things like 5G. And here I am 3 years later talking to you. Everything that can be done with a person, a camera, and a microphone with respect to surveillance, I submit to you, can be done remotely with things like a cell phone, a Wi-Fi router, the commercial cell tower nearby in your neighborhood, with complex software done at distance in the cloud, that ultimately big tech and big telecom have primary function and control over, and then contract back through various agencies to the intel community, the government, and private contractors. That's really what I'm talking about. Let's continue. It talks about being able to understand things specifically as pitch, and so they can determine what words you're saying and how excited you are or how calm you are when you say it, based on the pitch and your tone. And this all has to do with the subtle variations in the reshaping and the repositioning of your mouth and your tongue and your throat and everything that's required to talk. EM sensors generate over 1 million pulses per second. One can average 1,000 pulses for each reflected range or position. It's just one example. Then one can change to a new range or a new wavelength and then average another 1,000 pulses. Thereby, a user is able, for example, just an example, to measure 20 different parameters during a typical speech time frame of 10 milliseconds. 20 different parameters measured in 10 milliseconds. Twenty different parameters can be measured in 10 milliseconds. That is real-time signal analysis, signal gathering. Fluid speech can be extracted. Data obtained and calculations indicate a greater than 95% accuracy for all NASR organ measurements, non-acoustic, non-acoustic. So from electromagnetic sensors, greater than 95% accuracy, organ measurements, and greater than 99% for certain measurements. Estimates indicate that the acoustic unit detection error rate will approach 1 phonome in when sufficiently accurate EM sensors plus a microphone are used with advanced algorithm. This is highly accurate word recognition approaching human hearing standards. EM sensor data is especially useful in describing such PLU sets in a superior way to acoustics. So it's actually a better measuring technique than using a microphone. Electromagnetic waves, by that I mean, is a better way to measure acoustics than a microphone. Because in contrast to acoustics, partial organ motions and positioning can be easily measured. In particular, 2 gigahertz frequency electrotransmission modules were used to measure speech organ motion and to provide position of interfaces in whole organs as a function of time. The 2 gigahertz, listen to this, because this is your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi, folks. The 2 gigahertz wavelength is about 2 centimeters. It propagates well into tissue in that it propagates at least 20 centimeters into tissue. What is it, 3.4 centimeters per inch, I think, approximately? We're dealing with 20 centimeters, can propagate into tissue and reflects well off of these due to the dielectric discontinuities, meaning it can distinguish between lip tissue, tongue tissue, cheek tissue, teeth, bone, cartilage, and on and on and on. Oh, this is a good one. The simplest speech analysis system used to measure speech and speech organ motion is the field disturbance sensor, together with a microphone and a recording oscilloscope. So this is a lab environment where they're describing a specific component of the patent. The sensor works by processing changes in the reflected electromagnetic signal levels from organs when compared to a time average reflection. To measure a change occurring in a 1 millisecond time interval. The typical system will measure and average the organ conditions 2,000 times. In 1 millisecond, it will measure the organ conditions 2,000 times. Filtering of such received and averaged electromagnetic signals allow very small reflection changes in a given frequency or time band to be detected in the presence of the very strong average background, which means that with the 2,000 samples per millisecond, they can filter out everything they don't want because they have that many samples to pick from. Examples include measuring tissue distances changes smaller than 0.001 centimeter. Changes smaller than 0.001 centimeter, that's 10,000 nanometers, that's 10 micrometers, that's 0.01 millimeters. They can measure changes in movements of an organ. Keep in mind, this is just talking about your speech, but it says there are other applications. It understands variations down to 0.01 millimeter. Does the naked eye, no pun intended, the naked eye understand a variation of 0.01 millimeter? That's unfortunate. I guess it's time to move on. Well, let's go to the next one, because we still haven't looked at public tracking. We're going to breeze through this one. System and method for contactless speech recognition. Neural nets. This explains a little bit about how the neural nets and the software works. But this is from Alcatel-Lucent, which again came from Bell Labs. Alcatel-Lucent went to Europe, went to China. This is a German and French patent, a European patent, and it has a world patent. And I just really want to share a couple things with you. Contactless speech recognition processing using electromagnetic waves, right? Language recognition systems, biometric systems, meaning voice recognition and others, handwriting recognition systems in this patent, Alcatel-Lucent. This is a telecom infrastructure provider. Telecom infrastructure provider. I have seen Alcatel-Lucent systems everywhere in my personal previous work history. They are everywhere. Everywhere. They are used for major telecommunication, backhaul infrastructure connectivity. They are used everywhere. Implementations in at least one of a television, a PC monitor, a multimedia tablet, a set-top box, a projector, a conferencing device, a smartphone, a security device, a server, or a personal computer. We're talking about language recognition systems, biometric systems, voice recognition systems, handwriting recognition systems. May be integrated with or support microphone-based speech. May be integrated to support microphone speech. May. In this case, they're using 5 gigahertz or greater. One aspect, one example, one aspect. So, talks about beam angles. The closer you are, the wider the beam. The farther away you are, the more narrow the beam, because the beam spreads out like a cone. Comes out as a point and it spreads out like a fan. That's what a beam looks like. So the closer it is, the wider the beam can be because it's not traveling as far. And with that, we will move forward. Radar, microphone, speech recognition. The Navy, same thing. Radar microphone speech system developed enables remote speech detection and recognition of speaker-dependent isolated words, meaning it can identify an individual based on their speech patterns. Distances remote to the human body, as well as under non-visible conditions, such as through building materials and adverse weather, such as fog. So they're detecting your speech, isolating your speech, even if it's going through walls. So what does that look like? I don't know. Trump Tower, condos, apartments. Somebody else has got Wi-Fi. Somebody else has got a cell phone nearby. May not even be in the president-elect's own living space. It could be coming from the radio, television, or cell towers outside the damn building. Or it could be coming from somebody's local Wi-Fi router nearby in an adjacent apartment, above or below or next door. And I'll show you some of these pictures here. Here is an example of multiple antennas targeting a human to understand what they're saying, and then thereby, from the unique biometrics of the person's speech, identify who the individual is. Because everybody's speech is unique. Spatial awareness, up, down, left, right, forward, backward, being able to triangulate and target and map. Multiple methodologies, 2 antennas, 1 antenna, providing transmit and receive. And it just has a filter to basically with timing or frequency to be able to distinguish between when a transmission is sent and when a receive signal is sent. And it goes back through the processor. So it can be done with a single antenna or multiple antennas. This talks about being able to identify more than one individual using an antenna array that are at different ranges and specifically identifying individuals, again, with their biometric signatures using ultra-wideband technology, folks. So we will continue. Ultra-wideband and micro-impulse radar knows everything about you, physically, emotionally. It understands your speech, comes in an incredibly small form factor, and they are being integrated into everything. They are being integrated into everything. And so now we're going to look a little bit deeper by becoming a little more shallow. Personal electronic device with micro-impulse radar. This is from the Invention Science Fund, I believe. It is. This is a Bill Gates company, Invention Science Fund, LLC. And I believe this patent was from 2015. You can look up the Invention Science Fund. I encourage you to do so. They're very big into philanthropy. Invention Science Fund, 2011 and 2015. Personal electronic device, including a micro-impulse radar. The subject of tonight's discussion can be a cell phone, a smartphone, a personal data assistant, a pager, a tablet computer, for example. The device can include at least one micro-impulse radar operatively coupled to the personal electronic device and configured to probe one or more regions near the personal electronic device. Just remember that DARPA has been working on this for almost 10 years, and they are able to spread across the spectrum using very low power to use any frequency band and turn it into ultra wideband or micro impulse radar. So just because it's coming out today doesn't mean it hasn't been possible through the intelligence apparatus in the past. That's all I'm postulating to you at this point. The micro-impulse radar can be operatively coupled to a personal electronic device via an exposed interface. For example, the exposed interface can include a USB interface, a SIM card interface, a Wi-Fi interface, a Bluetooth interface, a Zigbee interface, an infrared interface, or a proprietary interface. In addition, or alternative to using the micro-impulse radar to measure an operating environment for a personal electronic device, a method can include a step wherein one or more second sensors are operated. The second sensors can include one or more of a microphone, a camera, a motion sensor, an accelerometer, a magnetic field sensor, an electronic compass, a gyroscope, a gravitational field sensor, a global positioning system receiver, a capacitive sensor. We're going to get into those real soon. A micro switch, a light sensor, an infrared sensor, a radio frequency sensor, a microwave sensor, a millimeter wave sensor, or a vibration sensor. What does this all mean? What it means is that it can use any sensor on your phone, for example, to collect and increase the probability of success or a greater accuracy rating for the data that's being collected, whatever it is. And we're going to get into some more outside of speech and your heartbeat and your respiration and what's going on with your baby. We're going to get into some more options. What else can be understood and extracted from the human? Operating the micro-impulse radar can be performed responsive to a second sensor. So based on what's happening with these other sensors in your phone, it can turn on, turn off, or change the characteristics of the micro-impulse radar in order to better understand the environment. Using these things in tandem or conjunction with each other, sensor fusion, and Google has a patent for that as well, sensor fusion, radar sensor fusion. Probe pulses are output to one or more regions located peripheral to a personal electronic device. The probe pulses backscatter from probe pulses and or radiation corresponding to the probe pulses and altered by the objects in one or more regions are received. So it understands direct radar imaging, or it can understand the backscatter and use it for radar imaging, active or passive surveillance. Microimpulse radar data can include information related to one or more of the range, strength of response, direction, and spectral characteristics, polarization, or Doppler characteristics. The information, listen closely, the information corresponding to the logic functions can include one or more of a body size, a body mass, body height, body shape, posture, body permittivity, carried articles, meaning what you have on your person or in your pockets, detectable body ornamentation, a characteristic movement. Do you walk with a limp? Do you talk with your hands? Do you talk with your neck? Like a valley girl. Oh my God. Your heart rate, an intracyclic heartbeat characteristic, breathing rate, a rate or a magnitude of inhalation, a rate or magnitude of exhalation, a tremor of all or part of the body, intracyclic breathing characteristics, a location of a user relative to the personal electronic device, a location of a plurality, many persons relative to the personal electronic device, a position of the user relative to one or more regions peripheral to the electronic device, three-dimensional spatial awareness, where you are and what you're doing in real time, what you look like, what your body is shaped like, the length of your bones, the size of your organs, a position of a plurality of persons relative to one or more regions, distinguishing you from your family members or your friends or your coworkers, each having their own unique physical and physiologic, meaning your emotions, characteristics, your biometrics being collected in real time, including your speech, I might add. Location of a motor vehicle operating position relative to a personal electronic device, or a location of a motor vehicle operating in a position relative to the user. A related patent, humaninternet.org, if you want to look at this stuff yourself. Network and personal electronic devices operatively coupled to microimpulse radar. Surveillance of stress conditions of a person using microimpulse radar. Surveillance of stress conditions. Surveillance system can include a microimpulse radar. This is wideband, ultra wideband, folks. Available in a mobile device near you, or a Wi-Fi router near you, or a 5G tower near you. Potentially even existing 4G towers and or maybe even digital television broadcast towers. Yeah. Remember all that mandatory cutover under the Obama administration, forcing everybody onto HDTV to clear up spectrum so they can rechannelize and high def and compress and put in all of this complex, crazy infrastructure into the digital television broadcast that was subsidized by the government because it was mandated? I wonder why the Time Warner merger with AT&T was such a big deal. Sure wasn't about the video content in my view. It was because they wanted the infrastructure paid for by the taxpayer. But anyway, I'm digressing. Microimpulse radar data from the signal processor can include data corresponding to the location, characteristic of a human physiological process, such as a heartbeat or breathing. We've established that in great detail so far. Yeah, Mustang Mary, I'm focused on the hardware that ties in conjunction with the Shadowgate documentary. The Shadowgate documentary talks about the software and the network architecture on the back end, how it's run over the internet. And I'm intimately familiar at this point with the hardware implementations, how they extract the signal information and put it onto the internet. Shadowgate talks about what it does once it gets onto the internet. The collection of the information, the processing of the information, the sale of that information, the duplication of that information and sending it overseas, completely violating the privacy, circumventing the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights of every American. What I'm particularly familiar with at this point is how it's actually extracted from the person. Let's continue. Thank you for that observation, Mustang Mary. The signal analyzer can be configured to determine a number of persons in the region. It can be configured to determine the size of a person or a relative size of the anatomical features of a person. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Can be configured to determine the presence of an animal in the region, can be configured to determine movement and or speed of movement of a person through the region, can be configured to determine or infer the orientation of a person, horizontal or vertical, your choice, such as the direction a person is facing relative to the region. Can be configured to determine one or more physiological aspects of a person in the region, can determine presence of a personal appliance, such as a cell phone, PDA, etc., or the presence of a metallized object, such as a credit card, smart card, access cards, can infer the gender and age of one or more persons based on a return microimpulse radar signal. For example, male bodies can generally be characterized by higher body mass density than female bodies, and thus can be characterized by somewhat greater reflectivity in a given range. Adult female bodies can exhibit relatively greater harmonic motion, or jiggle, responsive to movements, and can thus be correlated to harmonic spectra characteristics. Older persons generally move differently than younger persons, allowing an age inference based on detected movements in the region. Are you getting the picture? If you're not, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Apple, AT&T, Verizon, the NSA, CIA, Five Eyes, blah, blah, they get the picture because they get access to all this information and they can reconstruct it. They know you better than you know you. Folks, an object such as a person in the probed region can selectively reflect, refract, absorb, and or otherwise scatter emitted pulses. The receive antenna and transmit antenna can be combined into a single antenna. You mean a cell phone can do it all by itself? Yes, folks, a cell phone can do it all by itself. A filter can be used to separate the return signal from the emitted pulses. And it talks about the voltage pulses in this patent, typically not modulated onto a carrier frequency. Rather, the voltage pulse transmission spectrum is the frequency domain transform of the emitted pulse. So it goes across the entire frequency, uses low voltage, and uses the different frequencies to map what's going on in the environment. Wideband, ultra wideband technology coming to a 5G tower near you. Can probe a region by emitting a series of spaced voltage pulses. Oh, don't you worry. We're going to get into what these spaced voltage pulses can do, because they can manipulate your nervous system in addition to being able to image the environment. But we're not quite there yet. We're still talking about surveillance. Just wait until we start looking at the loose patents where they talk about Cartesian plots and being able to emit varying voltage-based square wave pulses to then override your nervous system to do things that like cause sexual excitement. Yes, that's coming on an upcoming show. The series of voltage pulses can be spaced between about 100 nanoseconds and 100 microseconds apart, very, very quickly. Emit the voltage pulses with non-uniform spacing. This is a critical piece when we want to talk about nervous system manipulation, non-uniform spacing. And it only takes picofarads in an electromagnetic field, which correlates directly with this ultra wideband technology because it touts safety because it's so low voltage. But it only takes picofarads of a change in the magnetic field with non-uniform voltage pulsing electromagnetic waves that generate a varying electromagnetic field in the picofarads, for example, to do things like manipulate your nervous system and push you to sleep or wake you up or give you a boner. The emitted series of voltage pulses can be characterized by spectral components having high penetration that can pass through a range of materials and geometries in the region. So what this means is this micro impulse radar, based on the frequencies you select, can pass through walls and still do what it needs to do. Signal sharing one or more characteristics can be correlated to triangulate to a location of one or more objects in the region. And that goes back to the videos we saw with the ultra precise location tracking down to centimeter or millimeter resolution. That phone's in your pocket and you sway to the left, it registers a change. You step to the right, it registers a change. You sit up, it registers a change. You stand up, you lay down, it registers a change. If it's in your breast pocket in a suit jacket or your coat and you inhale or exhale, it registers a change. Depth within a given range can be inferred from the strength of a reflected signal. A greater number of signals can be combined to provide additional depth information. A series of pulses can be combined to form a time series of signals corresponding to the object that includes movement information about the object through the region. Object location information can be obtained. Object shape information can be obtained. The velocity of the object can be obtained. Information about the inclusion of high density and or conductive objects, such as jewelry, cell phones, glasses, including metal, etc., and physiological information related to periodic motion can all be obtained. Micro impulse radar, ultra wideband data can include spatial information, time domain motion information, and or frequency domain information. It can be output in the form of an image. This information can be output in the form of an image. It can determine the demographic of one or more persons in the region. A demographic, how old you are, is an example of a demographic. How healthy you are is an example of a demographic. Whether you're male or female is an example of a demographic. Whether you're calm or excited or irritable, happy, angry, could all be categories and thereby then put into a demographic. If you were in an airport, for example, which some of these words that we're going to read here talk about implementing these things in things like train stations, bus stations, and airports, a demographic would be looking for people who are stressed, comparing their data against everyone else's, or accessing their biometric profile from a cloud like Amazon or Microsoft, because they have your baseline biometrics anyway. When you go to an airport, if you're not in your baseline normal, you might pop hot. You might trigger their little radar sensor system that they have in airports, and you might get pulled out for secondary inspection or questioning because you happen to be nervous about flying, or you happen to be nervous about your children being molested by the TSA. Micro-impulse radar data can include movement corresponding to the beating heart of one or more persons in the region. The one or more heart rates can further be characterized according to a confidence factor. Talks about using a spatial filter in order to extract very specific things, areas of contrast, velocity, or frequency components. Identify portions of a region having sufficient physical extent to correspond to body parts, or an entire body of a person, and remove features corresponding to smaller objects such as animals, small animals, leaves of plants, or other clutter. Complete environmental imaging, canceling out what's not needed using the spatial filtering stuff to then zero in on you. Everything about you, every line, every curve, every feeling, every sensation. Buy the iPhone. It's good for you. It loves you. It will love you back. It talks about having a database, folks. Process data corresponding to the micro-impulse radar data is compared to a database to determine a match. Well, gee, do you think if Apple has the ability to do things like map your emotions and identify your speech, even if you're not within range of the microphone, meaning through a wall, do things like map your body type, do things like map your children or your spouse? You think that they're going to want to collect that data? I do. Meaning I think they would like to collect that data. Do you think they are collecting that data? I do. They're not the only ones. Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and all of your telecoms. We are for sale. We are being raped as a society, not just as Americans, as a culture, as a society, as a sovereign country, as a freaking species at this point. We are being raped. Database, referencing the database, right? Object data can be received. It can be compared to corresponding data for a known object. For example, the edge of an object in a region can include a line corresponding to the outline of a head and a torso, a cardiac spectrum, movement characteristics of a young adult male. A first shape in the shape database can include an outline of a head and a torso, cardiac spectrum, density and movements characteristics of a young adult female, and or the head and torso outline, cardiac spectrum, density, and movement characteristics of a generic human. Can be measured and characterized to derive a probability value. Remote identification, whether you have a phone or not, it doesn't matter. If you live in modern society, you have been mapped, categorized, collated, cataloged. You have a dossier, you have a profile. It's been done. All of our rights have been violated. We are being assanguated, deleveraged, demonetized. Everything about us soaked, our energy, our time, our money being soaked away with scientific precision because of the data analytics, computation, and the ability to extract everything about you, which is then turned into a weapon system to disenfranchise, disempower the human, to usher in automation, robotics, and ultimately the removal of the majority of the species, folks. What else is in here? Oh, a region can include a region that is occupied by a succession of persons. For example, the region can include a security checkpoint in a publicly accessible area. Alternatively, the region can be in a limited access or private area. For example, a system can be used to provide primary monitoring of persons passing through a security checkpoint, or can be used to provide secondary monitor, for example, of persons who have already passed through a physical-based security checkpoint. So once you've been molested, they'll go ahead and just electrify you, so to speak, with or radiate you is a better term. They'll just radiate you with this micro-impulse radar technology to continue to monitor what's going on with you after you've been molested through the physical-based security checkpoint. Regions can include an airport security checkpoint, a security checkpoint in a federal building, an entry point at a military demarcation zone, a lobby of a bank, a vicinity of an automated teller machine, ATM, a store shoplifting deterrent region, an area prone to vandalism, an area prone to theft, a parking lot, a hospital, a retail store, a gas station, a restaurant or a bar, a club, a school, a home, a home. They even have it in here, a home, a business, an entertainment facility, or a sports facility, anywhere that this micro-impulse radar exists, that ties into the Internet of Things, command and controlled with cognitive radio, software-defined networks, everything for sale, everything offered as a service. If you got the money, honey, we got your disease. The system can be used to identify and or deter persons that have a probability of being in the process and or having an intent to commit a crime or an act of terrorism. In some cases, even having a probability of lying. Alternatively, the system can be used to identify persons that have a probability of requiring aid or assistance. Oh, it's loving, it's helpful. Such as may be the case if a person exhibits a stress condition corresponding to physical distress. A person may stand out from other innocent persons by nervousness that is betrayed by fidgeting, increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, shallower breathing, decreased digestive muscle activity, etc. Other telltale symptoms that, while not necessarily visible to a camera or to direct observation, can be detected by the micro-impulse radar technology. It can also be used to detect the presence of a weapon. The surveillance system operated by the micro-impulse radar to probe persons in the region to detect one or more physical or physiological attributes. This can include one or more physical and or one or more physiological attributes. For example, a physical attribute can include one or more of body size, body mass, height, body shape, posture, body permittivity, carried or otherwise associated articles such as a push cart, wheelchair, or other non-carried but associated articles, detectable body ornamentation or body movements. One or more physiological attributes can include one or more of a heart rate, respiration rate, heart anomaly, respiration anomaly, magnitude of a heartbeat, magnitude of a respiration, rate or magnitude of inhalation, rate or magnitude of exhalation, a tremor on all or part of the body, intracyclic characteristics of a heartbeat, intracyclic characteristics of respiration, or digestive muscle activity. The human stress condition can be predicted from the physical and or physiological attributes. Can be configured to predict the human stress condition by performing a statistical analysis of similarities between the one or more extracted physical or physiological attributes and one or more predetermined ranges of anomalous human stress conditions. I'm pausing because I don't want to repeat myself. Some of these paragraphs repeat. It talks about relatively high anxiety can be useful to predict a person, can be useful to predict in a person because it would be a criminal or terrorist may be expected to have some unusual feelings or anxiety in his or her anticipation of coming into a criminal or terrorist act. Such anxious feelings and corresponding physical or physiological tells may be made more evident under questioning. Thus, the system can be used to augment an interview station, interrogation room, or other facility where anxiety may be disproportionately heightened. Can be looked for a predicted stress condition that corresponds to physical stress. Can be used to indicate and or warn individuals in a marathon or triathlon that may be close to collapse, or otherwise spot persons who may be in need of assistance. In one embodiment, the system may be used to augment or provide a form of triage. We have a few minutes left, so we're going to watch some videos, and then we will move in to the next order of the day. Nitira.
In our ever-evolving world, the need for natural and seamless interaction between human beings and the digital ecosystem that surrounds us is increasing, fueled by the desire to improve lives and take care of those in need. Recent events such as the COVID-19 pandemic have highlighted the urgent requirement to sense human physiological indicators in a way that is continuous and without contact while respecting privacy.
Natera developed a unique micro-radar working in sub-terahertz frequencies, capable of monitoring vital signs through micro-skin motions.
Natera's microsensor is a fully integrated solution that includes antenna-on-chip and proprietary algorithms. The Natera radar senses microscopic skin motions, even through furniture and clothing. This takes place at a very high frequency, allowing for non-invasive, seamless, and continuous monitoring of human vital signs, such as heart and respiration rates, heart rate variability, inhale-exhale ratio, tidal volume, and more. Establishing a contact-free connection between human and machine is a game changer. Natera's remote sensing technology provides a highly flexible solution to a wide range of needs: healthcare and home monitoring, airports and public venues. It can be embedded in a chair, a bed, a customer kiosk, essentially in any location.
So there you have it, Natera. Watching over you, developing the right solution for this major need, solving that challenge in a seamless and reliable manner, respecting your privacy, bringing human sensing into previously unimaginable applications. It's a significant task, but we are ready for the challenge. We are making it happen.
It's an Israeli company.
In our
Just so you know, it's an Israeli company. Let's watch the next one.
I'm currently in a concept car called Smart Cocoon, which has been developed by the French company Valeo. It is fitted with multiple sensors, including a sensor that remotely detects the well-being of the passengers and the driver. This has been developed by the Israeli startup Natera, and it essentially consists of a 40 nanometer chip that has been integrated in the seat. This chip is able to detect vital signs like heartbeats, your respiration rate, the heart rate variability by just using a micro radar of 140 gigahertz frequency. Now, by using proprietary algorithms, the chip is able to detect and calculate all these vital signs. Now, the interesting part about this car is that the car adapts and reacts to these vital signs of the drivers, and it's able to adjust different parameters like air conditioning, heating, and even in certain cases it's able to release perfumes. And perhaps the most visual aspect of this detection and reaction of the car is the humidifier. As you can see, if the air is too dry, it releases moist air, and you can enjoy driving in a very relaxed and comfortable manner. Another facet of the car of the future is the vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Here's an example of it that has been developed by the French company Valeo. It looks like a magic trick, but I'm actually able to make the car in front of me partly disappear. Essentially, it helps the driver to see in front of the car that's in front of him. So here's an example of it. Julia, as you can see, is walking by in front of the car ahead of me. This is done through a communication between the camera of this car and the car that's ahead of you. It's extremely important because it helps to improve road safety, and it also aids in overtaking.
Did you catch that? Your car will automatically talk to somebody else's car, tap into their camera, and provide imagery. Just let that sink in when you look at complete and total surveillance, omnipresence, AI running the Internet of Things, smart cities, connected cars, automation. And that's just one example. And it's rolled out for safety. Your phones can do that. It's called device-to-device communication. And we'll go over some of that as time goes on. Let's move on. We only have a few minutes left. Vyar is another company that delivers the same type of solutions
I'm Yael from Vyar Imaging. Vyar develops 3D imaging devices that create a 3D image of the world around you in real time, utilizing dozens of antennas on the one chip. We're setting up some demos, and we're ready to go.
What you see here is location detection. Our device can even identify a person's body position or alert you if someone has fallen. It works in smoke, steam, or darkness. Unlike a camera, it doesn't take pictures and protects your privacy. It can differentiate between many people, even when close together. The device can pick up even minute changes, such as a person breathing, or two people breathing next to each other in different positions, and send an alert if someone stops breathing.
What you saw here today was one device that can replace the capabilities of numerous sensors. The same device can be applied for fall detection in elderly care, for smart home security and automation, for in-car monitoring and automotive, for retail applications, and many more things that we can't even imagine. So stay tuned.
One more.
Welcome to Vyar Home, where intelligent sensing is part of the everyday. Vyar Home uses tiny sensors to turn any home into the smartest home. Let's see how it works. Each Vyar Home sensor scans the room 24/7, 365. It knows how many people there are and whether they're moving, standing, sitting, or lying on the floor. It uses 4D point cloud imaging to monitor and protect people at home in pretty amazing ways. For seniors, Vyar Home tracks and analyzes their activities and gait to see if there's any health deterioration or whether they're at risk of falling. If they do fall, Vyar Home detects it immediately and automatically calls for help from your designated list. Vyar Home also protects the family from intruders. It senses when everyone has gone to sleep each night and then activates itself. It scans all doors and windows and potential entrance points all night long. If anyone attempts to enter, an emergency monitoring service can be alerted. Vyar Home tracks activity levels. It also monitors sleep patterns at night. It assesses your quality of sleep and lets you know if you have or are at risk of sleep disorders. Since Vyar Home senses when people come and go, it can automatically adjust lights, TV, heat or AC, works in light or dark, and sees through smoke or steam. And since there are no cameras, personal privacy is always protected. With its intelligent sensing and features for seniors, security, health monitoring, and automation, Vyar Home puts a better life within your reach.
So there you have it. Ultra wideband technology. Many, many, many useful applications. This is a surveillance delight, an absolute surveillance delight. So just be aware of what's around you. And at some point, society needs to have a greater discussion about what the Bill of Rights on the internet is going to look like. Because at this point, big tech and big telecom are taking over. They're taking over society. They're taking over the planet. So enjoy your technocratic governance.